All right, good morning, everyone. Actually, it's afternoon now, so good afternoon. Today, for the Connecticut Recycling Coalition webinar series, we're going to talk about contamination in single stream. And before we get started, I'm going to do a little plug for the CRC, our annual conference. Hopefully this is going to work, my little link. The annual CRC conference will take place on June 6th from 8 a.m. to 3 p.m. And we hope you'll join us. If you go to our website, ctrecyclers.com, you'll get to the front page. And if you just click on that logo, you can register and buy tickets. We do have an early bird special, so take advantage of that if you would like. So just wanted to give that plug. All right. So today, I know if you've joined us from the beginning, we have talked a little bit about contamination, but we've talked about contamination more on the point of the outside of the literal what's in, what's out, like gift wrap and bags and ice cream containers versus milk cartons. That's not what we're talking about today. We've already reviewed all that. What we're really talking about is the bigger picture of what's coming through our MRFs that really do not belong. We have some serious contamination beyond like just not the right paper, plastic, metal, glass, etc., but rather it's more like issues that are have health and safety risk to our workers, as well as it lowers the commodity value of the material. But a lot of the things that you're going to see today, we're going to talk about, really is about safety of our material recovery facility workers, as well as our haulers, from the moment they collect to the time it gets processed. So I hope you'll learn a few things that what we really need to do as recycling coordinators and those that face the public is to try to inform them so that we can improve the system, help our material recovery facilities do what they're supposed to do, because single stream really can work. It should work. It's designed very well. But it's not the system that's the problem, it's our residents and the consumers who are putting the wrong items in the recycling container that sometimes can just blow your mind. And so hopefully some of these pictures that I'm about to show will help you have some images in your head while you move forward to educate the greater public. So this is actually a repeated slide. I just want to reiterate the message about items under 2 inches, but also for those who may not have joined us on the last session. So if you can see, this is supposed to be material recovery facility glass, but there's a lot of metal and small items and batteries and prescription bottles that go in there. So always remember, teach your residents that the 2-inch minus rule is really important. Just because something's plastic, metal, or paper, it doesn't necessarily mean it belongs in the single stream. So these are some photos that I actually have taken over the last few years of our single stream on the tip floor before it goes to the MRF. And sometimes it doesn't even look like it's recycling. It actually just looks like garbage because it has a significant amount of garbage in it. So in this photo, you can see that there's a black garbage bag, there's film. Down here, it's clearly probably a bag of garbage, not recycling. And we have a hose, which would be considered a tangle. Plastic film gets caught around our V-screen separators. In most cases, the MRF has to shut down every 3 to 4 hours, and manually, you see these 2 guys down at the bottom, cut the film out with box cutters, and in the end result is just a bunch of garbage that gets sent to waste energy plant. Here's a carpet, clearly doesn't belong. Again, just more bags of garbage, wet cardboard, cushion, and here we have some, you guys just, I'm like, why can't I think today? The board down here doesn't obviously belong in the single stream. Propane tanks. I'm actually surprised that a 20-pound tank would be put in single stream, but clearly it does. We also get single 1-pound cylinders that go through. These are helium tanks in the pink. Although helium is not flammable, they should not go. They're still under pressure. And then cement blocks, bricks, I have another photo that was to the right of this image. This was actually brought through single stream. This is on the line. We have a nursery pot still with the dirt and the dead plant in it. And just looking at this line, the serious contamination, you can kind of look because there's not a lot of color to it. It's not very pretty. You're also going to see that they're pulling up the plastic straps that typically go around a box of cardboard, and those are your tangles. And here's some more tangles. This is wire that literally went through the single stream. Then we're going to show you a little video, if you haven't already seen this, of what happens with a propane tank when it hits the baler. So we have 3 guys down there, and this is in slow motion. These guys were really lucky that no one was hurt, but some significant damage happened at this MRF within that baler. And here's another explosion. So this is the importance of making sure that we don't have propane tanks going through single stream. And the EPR for cylinder law did pass in 2022, and it will take effect in the year 2025, where our municipalities can collect propane cylinders at our municipal transfer stations at no cost. A review on lithium-ion batteries. A lot of typical electronic devices here that folks think they can put in single stream, and let's show you what the impact to a lithium-ion battery is. This is just last March, 2023 in Shelton, Connecticut. This is the Oak Ridge MRF. So at 12:13 a.m., the cameras caught some smoke coming off. Nobody was in the building at this time. Here's a time lapse at 1:53 a.m. And at 2:43, you start to see a flame. And then the flames were actually detected at 2:50 a.m. The fire department did arrive at 3 a.m., but the facility was already engulfed. 18 fire departments responded to this fire. This is from a lithium-ion battery. So the fire department fought this for 30+ hours. And 45 employees lost their jobs. There was over $15 million in damage. And they've been closed now for 14 months. And we've had to divert 6,000 tons of single stream to another MRF. So there's some serious damage inside this facility. So I'm hoping these images will give you a nice impact of what we're dealing with, or what MRFs are dealing with on a day-to-day basis. And I want to thank again our panelists for joining us from Murphy Road, Jonathan Murray, from Casella, Rachel Ashworth and Mike Crowell, and from Wynn, Keith LeBron, and from Oak Ridge, Joe Sardone. So thanks guys for joining us today. And I want to open it up so we can start talking about some of this material, and I will guide you through, like, let's talk about who's had a propane tank cylinder explosion in your MRF, and what has happened, and what was the damage, and did anyone get hurt?
I could start. We've had propane tank explosions, mainly with the small camping size propane cylinders. Those tend to make it farther through. They end up with the metal, the tin cans. They go to the baler, and that's when they explode. Typically, the baler will contain it. We don't get damage, but it is a scary thing, and it is a pretty good explosion. So propane cylinders, and then I will kind of go on the lithium-ion battery trend. This is Wednesday of this week, and we've had 3 lithium-ion fires this week that we've extinguished ourselves and successfully, but they are very problematic for us every single day of the week.
Anyone want to jump on that?
Yeah, well, over my career, I've been very fortunate. Some of those videos, Jen, are horrific. We've been very fortunate. We've had the smaller type explosions where you just with a compaction with the tin bales, it'll just the flames will just shoot out and that'll be it. And to John's point, just the bale will contain most of it. It is a scary moment though for the individual operator that's there.
I've those two incidents that you guys saw from Connecticut they actually happened at this site here years ago. And you know, just recently talking about the lithium ion batteries, about a week ago, I had a scenario where one of them explode, you know, and it was a fire. And thankfully we were able to extinguish it. So, but that's still an issue here with the lithium ion. And in my career, I was involved about 2 or 3 years back. It was in Elizabeth, New Jersey, before I came to this position, where there was an explosion and someone did die. So unfortunately, someone lost his life, and you know, it was due to aerosol cans. They just started exploding, and when those aerosol cans exploded, it created a fire scenario, and it went all throughout the MRF. And unfortunately, someone, you know, did not make it out. So.
The problem is with the smaller propane tanks, even when the baler does contain the explosion per se, it's still damage to the inside of the baler, right? You are damaging the ram, you're damaging your liner, you're damaging everything inside that baler, which is problematic as well, right? All of us know how much it costs to reline a baler. All of us know how much it costs when the ram's off. So those explosions, although they can be contained and not cause serious damage throughout the plant, the damage is still being done inside the whatever's containing it. The lithium ion batteries, we lost a lot of our recordings, right? But the lithium ion battery, we had an issue here where the lithium ion battery caught on fire and then hit the screen, and then proceeded to turn into flaming shrapnel all over the plant. So the issue with the contamination is even though you can contain some of it, and even though you can put the fires out, and even though, like, we shouldn't have to, right? It's you know, Keith was able to put a fire out. That's amazing, right? But the risk associated with that to the employees, to the facility, to everything, it's not worth it. It's not worth it. Like, I've been in fires inside MRFs where it got behind us, right? We thought we were putting the fire out. We thought we were doing a good job, and we didn't realize it was behind us and we were trapped, right? And payloaders had to race down and dig us out, or we would have died. So it's containing them and putting them out. It's great, right? But we shouldn't be in that position.
So do you guys have suggestions on how, I mean, even though we're going to have EPR for propane cylinders coming to Connecticut in 2025, do you foresee any way that we can move the public education and outreach to actually make sure they don't make it in single stream?
I would, I mean, you know, the picture does it all, Jen. I mean, do we have funding to do electronic advertising or TV and include some of these, you know, footages in the ad campaign? I mean, just like, hey, wake the frig up, people out here. This is what's happening, right? I mean, something to that effect.
Yeah, I would agree. I think it needs to get out there. The lithium ion batteries. I mean, I've seen news reports where fire departments are talking about, don't charge them in your house for too long. When you're done charging it, don't leave it plugged in. But they're not talking about what happens when it comes to our facilities or goes to a transfer station, or, you know, even if it's just left in the garbage truck, it can burn the garbage truck. So they are very problematic. And same with the propane cylinders, and the EPR will hopefully help that out. But I think we got to get out there in front of it and somehow get on the news to say, and not everybody reads the news or watches the news, so it needs to get to social media, because people are just putting it in these because they say it's metal. It's probably empty. It ran out when I was cooking my hamburgers at the football game, so it must be empty. But just doesn't take much to get it going. And I think the other thing that starts fires for us recently is pesticides. Those
That's-
containers are terrible, and we've been kind of doing a study to see how many are in there, and it's actually at this time of year you're going to see a lot more of them, but it's surprising how many are in there. And I think recycling coordinators out there, you need to kind of bring the why to your residents of why not to put the stuff in, because I think if they don't understand why, it doesn't light the light bulb. But there's people out there that could get severely hurt or killed, and I think that's really the message that needs to get out there.
I think we also have to put more that the townships and the haulers have to bear some of that burden of the education, right? We kind of, it gets picked up and then it's out of sight, out of mind. It gets, townships, and I understand the money and the funding and the this and the that and all the things that go with it, but townships have to step up to inspect and educate, fine. There should be fines associated with it, right? Like something has to happen out of the box, right? We've been talking about the same things and the same contamination for years, and it's just progressively getting worse, right? It's not getting better. Now we have more contaminants, the pesticides, the pool chemicals, the excuse me, the propane bottles, the lithium ion batteries. It's progressively getting worse and more dangerous. So townships and haulers have to get on board to say, like, all right, well, we don't have the funding for that. Well, you're going to need it. You're going to have to figure it out, right? Who's paying for Keith's MRF, right? Because he lost material, right? And whatever material he didn't lose through the fire, he lost because now there's fire extinguisher stuff on it. You can't use that, right? Then you run into the risk of making the bales off of the stuff that's on the tip floor, and the fiber smells like fire. So now you can catch a rejection off of that, right? If they open up a sea container that's been on, 6 months going to wherever it's going to, and they pop it open and it smells like it's on fire, you got a problem, right? So somebody's got to step up and bear the burden because it's getting worse.
Let's talk about that for a second, because all of you as MRFs also have a hauling business on the side, right? So you have two different businesses. You collect material at the curb, and you're also, you all own transfer stations, and you own MRF facilities. So across Connecticut, many of our communities, the majority of our communities, are private subscription. They are not collected but with municipal trucks and municipal employees. And some of our municipalities that have municipal tax collection of material, we are hiring out third party to a private hauler to collect that material. So the haulers themselves have the most direct space with our residents, your customers, to interface in that public education. So how do we together work as a unit, as a partnership, to say, well, yes, that's why we have put on this webinar series as the Connecticut Recycling Coalition, as well as municipalities, to say, hey, our recycling coordinators really need to be better informed so they can answer the why when they are talking to the public, because the public's not calling you, they're calling our town saying, how can I recycle this? Can I recycle that? They need to be able to answer these questions based on this conversation. At the same time, our haulers, many of you, as well as the small guys, I mean, we're in the HRA region, we have 14 municipalities, we have over 70 registered haulers. And we need to rely on them as well to give that education to their customers, but many times they don't. They're concerned about competition, they're going to lose their customer. If they tell their customer, you can't recycle that, because they're going to lose the competition to maybe one of you. So how do we address that? Do you have an idea of how we face that?
Yeah, I think it's got to be twofold, right? So the first thing is that there has to be unity among the haulers, right? Keith can't say to somebody, you can't put that in there, and then that somebody comes to me and I say, it's all right, I'll just take it. Right? So there has to be a unity among the haulers. How we get to that, I don't know. The second half of it is, how many recycling coordinators in the state of Connecticut have actually driven around their towns and seen what's in their actual toters? Right? Just because there's a third party hauler doing it, you're the recycling coordinator for that town. Do you go out? Do you look and see what's in your people's cans? Right? It's easy to sit on the sidelines and say a million things, but do you get out there and immerse yourself in it to take care of it? You're right, 70 haulers, right? So the small guy that has 2 trucks, right? That's a huge lift for him, right? Where a township could support him, support the small business and give him, say, hey, our recycling coordinator's right there with you. We're going to go around with you. We're going to look at things. We're going to help you educate, right? There needs to be more of a symbiotic relationship other than, Keith not accepting something and me saying, no, just give it to me. I'll take it. Right. And then on the flip side of that, the townships have to get out there and start looking, start talking, start doing more. Right. Just an infra, if somebody drives around and looks at some things and puts a couple things on a toter, right? Or on a door, right? To generate some sort of conversation at least. Mike from Casella gets a thing on his door that says your toter didn't pass inspection, right? Please give him a tax line, right? Regular human being looks at it and says, whoa, what do you mean? I got to call the tax office? What's up with this? And then they call it and you put them to the recycling coordinator who talks to them about what it is. It's hard for some of those small guys. It really is, man. You got a 2-truck business and you don't want to lose anything. You also don't want to get fined on the back end for contamination. So everybody's got to kind of work together with it better than we have in the past.
Well, I think what is really important, I'm sorry, Rachel, I'll just say, what I think is important though, when it comes to recycling coordinators is to understand that the majority of recycling coordinators across the state of Connecticut are not an actual job. They're not an actual position. They're a title. And that does need to change. It needs to change at the state level. Our recycling coordinators need to be well-trained, perhaps even certified. Every recycling coordinator should have to have visited a MRF. And you're right, and maybe perhaps look through your community's recycling bin. But the bandwidth and the resources of municipality to send out an enforcement officer, the reality is they're not there. It doesn't mean that that's an absolute excuse. That's where we have to come together as a state and find a way that we can partner. Like, let's look at how does a tip fee get formulated? The tip fee is based on the value of your commodities that are coming through there. So if there's crappy material going through, you're not going to have high value. If there's a lot of contamination, you're going to have a lot of residual that costs money to get rid of. That lowers the value or increases your tip fee. You have processing costs. So we have to rely on the material recovery facilities to be efficient, to be able to source that material, to reduce costs, to then therefore reduce the tip fee. And then obviously there's T&D, depending on where those transfer stations are, to transport that material to the MRF. And so if the recycling coordinators can also understand that there's a formula that we all pretty much use to determine what those tip fees are, and contamination, aka residual often, is a negative value to our system. Perhaps if there's a way that we can build into the cost of that public education, maybe that should be considered. Would that be something as MRF operators you'd consider, that maybe there's a part of that fee that every hauler across the state has to pay into that goes into public education and outreach? Otherwise, municipalities are not going to put it in their annual budget. Thoughts on that?
I think it's something that is always worth considering. If I was a recycling coordinator, I would definitely look for ways to bring my municipalities together. If you think about propane tanks and batteries, I would be reaching out to my local fire departments. I would try and organize perhaps a live training at a MRF setting on how to extinguish lithium-ion batteries right there on site, and then perhaps walk the public in to show them what type of damage a fire like that could do in a facility like this. Invite your local news stations to see the live training with your fire departments. I'm sure most fire departments would be interested in joining an event like this at no cost to the MRF. And it's just a very visual walkthrough and training of public education that's going to bring everyone together, get eyes on this problem, see the potential impacts it could have, and then just try to troubleshoot with your local news stations on if you put this battery in your recycling, this is the result of that. Some of these firefighters live in your town. These are our brothers, our dads. Same with the MRF employees, and just a little act of putting a propane tank into your recycling can have this effect. I think those invites and just kind of public outreach would come at very little to minimal cost and have a huge impact when it comes to education.
So I agree with the
is really
education
great.
part of it. I agree with the education part of it, but I kind of disagree with it as well, right? Because I feel like the more people see, so me, Jonathan, Mike, yourself, Keith, we go on and we show how we can fight fires. I feel like the common resident is going to say, well, they'll be fine. They're trained in it. They'll be okay with it. They were trained. I saw it on TV. I saw them get trained with it. So it's not really that big a deal. They know how to handle it, right? The onus on our end has always fallen on us, right? Glass, you deliver glass, the onus falls on us to make it cleaner. Never falls on the receiver to make it cleaner, right? They're not putting new glass systems in. They're not doing anything. The onus always falls on our end, right? Even with things like this, the onus falls on us. The onus should fall on the townships, right? We've been doing things the same way for a million years. It's not working, right? So the onus has to fall someplace else. The education part of it and getting people there, that's for us, right? We're going to bring people in and learn how to fight lithium-ion battery fires because we want to keep our people from dying. But the onus has to go someplace else as well. And the common human that will see that on TV will make the statement in their head. And Keith, I saw you nodding. You understand it, right? They'll be all right. They're trained in that. They're trained to fight that fire. They'll be fine. You have to figure out a way to put the onus someplace else, right? Somebody else has to be involved in this, not just, we can't be the end of it. And that's what always happens. Plastic bags, like plastic bags are out in Connecticut for the 7-8 years that I've been here. They've been out. They've never stopped. They've never stopped. So there's something systemically wrong in the way it's being done. If for 8 years something has been on the out, can't be recycled, can't be used, can't be done, and we're doing it the same way, and for 8 years plastic bags have never stopped.
Have you not seen any reduction in the plastic film impact? I mean, obviously, we're still going to have plastic film, the film around a case of water, et cetera, your dry cleaner bags. But you still see the volume, all of you?
Yeah.
I still
Okay,
see
so we need to address that.
problematic.
Yeah, there's a lot.
Yeah, and it's because on the granular level, it's not being taken care of, right? So you made a great point, Jen, right? If all of those recycling coordinators are volunteers, and they always have been, then the state should step in and make money. I mean, it's a state, right? We all pay taxes, right? So there has to be a way for them to make a paid recycling coordinator who has a list of things that they have to accomplish, right? Goals, right? Metrics that have to be hit, stuff that's looked at, right? You're right. They're all volunteers. They bust their butts. I get calls from the volunteers inside the townships constantly. They are 100% into it, right? But they're volunteers. There's only so much time in the day for them, right? I could name a million of them that have called me, but the onus has to switch someplace else. It's always been something that it bewildered me in this business when I got to it, is that, you have to, the recycling has to be clean, the glass has to be clean, but everything falls on us. We have technology now for anti-wrap screens. So all the people on this call, when we're building a MRF or looking at a MRF, we're paying extra money now for anti-wrap screens because we can't control the wrapped material that comes in. right? So
I think I think it's common that often if you can't solve the problem by better human behavior, then you need to engineer your way out of the problem. And I think that's where technology does come. I think the fact of the matter is we're always going to have wishful recyclers and hopeful recyclers. We're always going to have residents who don't care, who are never going to use their recycling bin for recycling. They use it as another trash can. And then we have the transient population who either there's a language barrier or their practice of recycling is very different from where they came before coming to Connecticut. So we do have to engineer our way around some of the issue. Even when we do have the best public education, there was a comment in the Q&A that our CEOs or our chief elected officials, even if they have a recycling coordinator, a paid recycling coordinator, not a volunteer, that they probably would not support a town employee going through carts for trash recycling. There would be zero follow through on any fines or enforcement. And whether we agree with that comment or not, I think it is the reality of towns not taking responsibility because of the fiscal impact to a recycling coordinator being able to do that. So it sounds like what I'm getting from this is, listen, we have a real problem throughout the state. We have a problem with enforcement and contamination. So maybe we have to start thinking outside the box on how we can use some funding, whether it's through maybe the Recycling CT Foundation, or it's through the state, or maybe it is through adding some small fee to our tip fees to designate more public education or more enforcement officers. Clearly, we need to address this issue because beyond, we've only covered lithium-ion batteries and the issue with propane tanks exploding in your balers, but we haven't also touched on, well, Jonathan mentioned the pesticides, but it's also pool season. So we have pool chemicals. You get a corrosive and a flammable together, there's your fire. So this is the time of year, and Keith mentioned aerosol cans. We're putting hazardous material because it's in a metal container or a plastic container. We have a serious issue at the MRF. How do we address that? We have to address it through public education. Do you want to talk, Joe, maybe, or someone mentioned about pool chemicals as well? Do you see a lot of containers that are not empty? Let's talk a little bit about empty containers versus containers that still have content in it. Does it matter? Does it matter even if it's empty? It also has a detrimental impact. Yes.
yeah, the pool chemicals are dangerous, right? Because you have heavy bases, right? And heavy bases that I don't think the normal resident realizes that a heavy base can burn the crap out of you, right? So you get those pool chemicals in there, and for some reason, and Jonathan, I don't know if you've ever seen it, or Mike or Keith, but sometimes those pool chemicals catch on fire too. It's weird. And I don't really know, like, I'm not a scientist. I don't really know what happens with it, but sometimes they put those pool chemicals in there, they sit in the pile, and then there's like a gestation period with it, and it combusts. It's really, really bizarre, right? And they're very dangerous. I think part of the thing is, and Jen, one of the things that you said kind of had me thinking, we've gone from plastic bags, right? And new technology to get rid of plastic bags. But I think what we need to start pushing to everyone is that pool chemicals, aerosols, lithium-ion batteries, they'll kill you. It's going to kill somebody. Rotors, like I was talking to somebody the other day, and everybody here knows it. If you don't catch a rotor on your pre-sort and it hits those screens, you got a problem. You have a problem. You have a 40-pound missile in your plant, right? And it's just that education, like, rotors are recyclable. Don't put them in your thing. Bring them to a transfer station. Bring them to a metal box there, right? Pool chemicals are super dangerous, right? Super dangerous because sometimes they're sealed as well, and then they pop open and they get your employee in the face.
So,
Right.
so I just, to add to what Joe's saying, is I think it goes back to the conversation maybe we had last week or 2 weeks ago or 2 weeks before that. Food grade containers. We've said that about the aerosol cans. We've said that about a lot of things. Food grade containers. Pool chemicals aren't considered food grade containers. Propane tanks, not a food grade container. So we try to educate on all these different things. We have the what's in, what's out. I don't know how we're going to stop though from people from putting it in there. It's been food grade containers since recycling started. I really going back to the 90s. And so I don't know how we're going to get people to understand that these things don't go in. It's the wish cycling effect. It's the, I don't know what to do with this thing, so I'm going to stuff it in this container over here and they'll figure it out. And so I think it is kind of a conundrum for all of us to know how to get that word out and showing pictures and videos. Some people will get it, some people won't. I just don't think people think about it sometimes. Oh, there's only one tab left in this pool container, but that chlorine is an oxidizer. It's creating oxygen, and it takes a very little spark to start that up. And then that, especially a lot of times it's the back of the garbage truck. And then it's either dumped at our facility while it's on fire or it gets dumped on the road somewhere. So it's all comes down to with consistency with, we talk about 2" minus, don't put that in there. Food grade containers only.
And I think maybe, Jen, utilizing the transfer stations, like I know for me working with HRA, like you guys go all out training at the transfer stations, right? I don't know what everybody else does at their transfer stations, but I know that there's heavy training at the transfer stations for HRA. So maybe that's the way we go, is that you push towards, you know, food grade container, and everything else, go to the transfer station. Let's figure it out. Because at least you're there one-on-one, right? And like, if there's, I mean, I know every transfer station operator, right? So if there's a question, you know, Weston calls me all the time, right? Hey, what do I do with this? What do I do with that? What do I do with this? Right? But we want that, right? I think everybody that's on this panel wants that, because I would rather answer that question at another location rather than, as in Keith's case, fight a fire.
I'm going to throw a little twist in here from what Jonathan, you know, and Joe, you're saying, because, you know, and I completely agree. We need to stick to food grade, food grade, food grade. You can't say that enough. And yet let's talk about oil, because it's not just motor oil or any type of mechanical oil that is a concern. Isn't there a concern with receipt? You know, you get vegetable oil, cooking oil that often doesn't, it's not an empty container. It still has the oil in it. So that's another piece of heightened public education for our recycling coordinators to understand. We need to educate our residents that the container needs to be clean and empty. You can take the vegetable oil container, but they need to make sure it's empty. If you want to talk about, do you have that issue?
Yeah,
I can
A water
actually,
bottle needs to be
one
empty.
thing that happened to me 3 weeks ago. We had you know, HDPE load, right? It went into the baler, and all of a sudden, oil just spilled out everywhere. It was a mess. And the thing is oil isn't so easy to clean up because now it's everywhere. So the baler's been contaminated. Now I have to work on cleaning the baler. And then also, you know, my employees were soaked in oil. So that's a big issue.
and the operating costs that people don't understand for Keith to clean that baler out, he can't bale any fiber until that's fully cleaned out, right? So now you run into the paper or the cardboard getting backed up. Now you got to shut the sort down, right? Because you can't run because you're full, right? But you can't bale it, right? It's just a total downstream problem. And I think another thing that I've seen, I don't know if everybody else has, but I've seen a lot of misunderstanding about the food recycling that's going on, right? So there's townships that are doing the food recycling in the bags, and people kind of get confused and are throwing the bags in with the regular recycling, right? I think we all get it. I still get the bottles full of bacon grease. I still get the bottles full of used, like somebody's got a deep fryer at their house and they got rid of the oil, and they some people put the gel in it, it turns to the gel, and then they still throw that into the recycling because they think we recycle oil, right? So it's just that education on that granular level inside the townships that I think's got to take place. All of us on this call have had the grease, the bacon grease, the regular grease, the pool chemicals, just it's, like Keith said, and people don't understand when that explodes in there, your first thing isn't, oh my God, it's oil. It's, oh God, what just happened to my guys? What is that? right? And if you don't know, like, that's terrible for an employee to be covered in an unknown substance that could potentially harm them. I mean, think about that. All of us that are on this call, those poor guys, men and women that do this work for us, are saturated in oil, human waste, right? We get a lot of diapers for some reason in contamination, right? Imagine what's going through that person's head when they're covered in a hot, unknown substance. And then what goes through our head, right? It's in their eyes, it's in their mouths, it's in their ears. Like that, it's terrible. And I think that's
Can
what
you,
needs to get out there.
Can you tell me, raise your hand? I'm sure everyone's going to raise your hand, but I'm curious, any employees ever poked with a sharp?
Yeah, it's probably all of us, but real quick, I mean, another, way back in my career, we actually had to have the Boston, hazmat team show up at our facility on our second shift because it was just unknown and a bottle exploded and didn't know what it was. People are choking, eyes are watering. It's just brutal out there. But I know you wanted to flip to getting stuck. I mean, me personally speaking, I'm not gonna speak for the people on the panel. It's really improved. It's still out there, but way back when they were told that diabetics, oh, you can just send them into the recycling stream, and I'm like, what? You'd have hundreds of needles out there, years ago. For me personally, I've seen definite improvement, and the amount of sticks have drastically been reduced with that.
Yeah.
But it's
Yeah,
much
but I
like
don't,
the bacon grease jars. I mean, there's a lot of folks out there that put their used needles in a Tide bottle and tape it.
correct.
Then they throw it in the recycling. So if you run to a MRF that runs a system that has a trommel, those needles are going to go throughout the entire system. And I myself has been stuck by a needle when I was cleaning out a glass breaker. They're just everywhere. You'll find them in your glass piles at every single MRF you go to.
And I don't really think the needle reduction has been from this, right? I don't think it was a recycling thing that made the needle reduction. I think it was the drug awareness programs and the needle exchange programs that are taking place that has made it less for us, because we still do get the 2-liter soda bottle full of needles, right? But we know from doing this over the years, we're like, all right, that's, just grab that, get it off. It's not as crazy as when you get a real needle come down just on its own, and then you got to stop everything, right? You have to stop everything. You have to start looking to see where it is, what it is, right? To make sure it's not downstream, upstream, on the floor, in the baler, right? But I don't think that, again, came from us. I think that came from, the awareness, the drug awareness throughout the country of the needle exchanges.
Do you
Right, I
want to
just think-
tell do you want to tell the recycling coordinators what happens when one of your employees gets stuck? What process they have to go through because you don't know who had that needle previously?
Yeah, you're on
Pretty awful.
terrible medication for 6 months, right? If Rachel's been through it, she can speak on it. It knocks you on your butt. And the whole time you're knocked on your butt, again, that employee has to deal with the psychological part of it of, oh my God, do I have not only maybe a debilitating disease, but something that can kill me, something that just altered my entire family's life, right? And then medication after medication, and taking the medication's terrible. It's worse than chemo.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing that. I think it's been really important for the recycling coordinators to hear that it's not just a scary moment. It literally is a true impact to their health and safety and their families. Someone just made a comment or question, which I think is, while we're still on containers that have chemicals in them, if a laundry product container are accepted in plastic or in the single stream, does that include Clorox bottles? If we accept that, what's the difference between that and a pool shock bottle or pool chemicals? So pool chemicals are chloride. So do you want to talk about that? The difference between bleach for laundry versus bleach for a pool?
I think the difference is just more that the container is empty. Traditional residential recycling, if you create this in your general day-to-day living, cooking or laundry or something of that sort, that's what people are looking for. If you have bleach in a Clorox bottle, we're going to have the same type of result in the MRF as if it was a pool chemical. So people just need to ensure that their bottles are empty. I mean, I always say a rule of thumb to folks when they're thinking about recycling is if you're going to have your kids go out and sort this before it gets to the MRF, are you okay with everything you put in it? And that's how people need to think. It's your family at the MRF. It's your family collecting this and hand sorting it on a belt that's whizzing 30 to 50 tons an hour by your face. Do you want your kids there hand sorting this material? And think about that when you put things in the bin.
So is it along the lines of other material that it's not recyclable? Obviously, the pool chemical bottle is obviously recyclable in theory. It's just that you have to say no in general across the board because you're getting material that's contaminated, sort of like plastic plates and bowls, depending on the plastic bowl, could potentially be recyclable, but the problem is the food residual is more likely to be on it, or that paper container still has food in it from the college dorm. So we have to say, in general, across the board, we don't accept it. Clorox container bottles tend to be clean because you just finished it out of your laundry room and you're putting it in your recycling. So it's the fact that the bottle needs to be empty, and we just need to have a consistent message. Yes?
Yes.
Yeah, you got it.
And please, Mike, that story of the that you told recently, that's what I want our recycling coordinators to hear. You have to tell these stories so they understand that this is really happening. It's not theoretical. It's real. People are really getting hurt at our MRFs, and these are our neighbors and friends. I want to talk a little bit about paint cans. What's that impact? I mean, I know our haulers don't want them because they spill in their trucks, but let's talk about paint cans for a second. That's a serious contaminant, yes?
Yeah, it destroys everything it comes near. Paint can with paint inside it ruins everything. They ruin our trucks. They ruin our public streets. They ruin our MRFs. They ruin our product. They ruin everything. Every single thing they touch is affected by it. I mean, everybody on this call, I think, has been down the road of the rear loader or side loader that had a paint can in it, and now you're out there cleaning the side of the road because it dripped all over the place. Paint cans that open up inside the baler, right? To Keith's point, now you're cleaning out the whole baler because if you don't, everything that you bale is now contaminated. Your tip floor, if it breaks open on your tip floor, everything that it touches is now contaminated. God forbid it gets to your screens, right? If that paint can opens up on that screens, it's like a college dorm when you used to have the black light and you put the black light on, you'd have the stars all over the ceiling. It's everywhere. They're terrible. They should not be put in residential at all.
And it just adds to the cost, right? I mean, again, I believe I've touched on earlier discussions about, people always complain about the cost of recycling. And, to everybody's point, that paint can goes everywhere. The value of all that material just went south hard, right? So that overall value is not going to be there for the resellable product. Now your inherent costs are going to go up. I mean, it's just a domino effect with our contamination, no question.
And some contamination, to Mike's point, goes down. So like moisture, if you're getting $50 a ton for something and it's heavy moisture, they might lower the cost, or you might know somebody that can take the wetter paper, right? But if you have paint all over it, you're throwing it out. Nobody's going to take that. So now that's that $50, right? Reset that to zero because now you lost $50 on it. Now add to it the $80 to dispose of it, right? And put it together, right? So now where you were getting $50 for something, now you're losing $130 for something. Like that. That's how, and people don't understand that.
Steve, you want to say something?
I also operate a transfer station here, right? And this happened a couple of months ago. A paint can, well, a couple, were dumped at the transfer station. And when it was loaded, we didn't know that it was in there. When it was loaded, the whole trail of the walking floor just started leaking paint off from the bottom. And it just became a nightmare. There was paint everywhere. So what we had to do is we had to dump the load. We had to try to get everything out, take out the paint cans, and then, you know, repaint everything. Yeah, it just became a nightmare. And that's even at a transfer station. So at a MRF, just kind of like what Joe was saying, everything becomes contaminated at that point.
And I don't think there's enough of a understanding from residents, townships, everybody of the exuberant amount of money it costs for contamination, right? Just something like paint, right? So Keith has to paint, you got to clean up the ground, right? Then you got to repaint whatever it touched. You got to clean out that walk-in floor, right? All of those costs add up, right? And then where does it go? Who eats that cost? Right? We do. Right? And that's tough, right? You know, Jonathan's got, you know, a brand new plant they put together, right? So I know from the optics standpoint, if you get all that stuff in there and that light bar that gets contamination on it, gets paint on it, could you imagine?
Yeah.
The cost associated with that is insanity, right? And people don't realize that, right? That it's more than just somebody saying, hey, don't put this in your recycling, right? It's the toughness of an employee who gets a needle stick and asks you if they're going to die. Like, imagine that. Imagine an employee, I had an employee look right at me and say, Joe, am I going to die? Right? Imagine if everybody understood the cost association with moisture, with paint, with oil, with it's an exuberant amount of money that it costs us. And there's no place to push that cost to.
Yeah, scary stuff. So it seems like we've touched base on more of the health and safety concerns on a lot of these items than anything else. And it's interesting how something that you wouldn't think could possibly be a health and safety risk really is. So we only have a few more minutes we're going to try to wrap up today at 1. How about another common item that we have this question, pots and pans and other, you know, metal kitchen utensils, knives. Is that something you guys experience? And what happens when that hits your balers?
The amount of knives.
What's the impact to your MRF?
So the amount of knives that I see come through, like kitchenware knives, is kind of staggering. I didn't see it at my other MRFs. Here, for some reason, I do. And just, it's dangerous, right? It hits that belt. That belt's flying. You put your hand down. I don't care what cut rating you have. You need chainmail to make sure you don't get cut with that knife.
Yeah, and I'd say the
Anyone
pots
else
and
have
pans.
that same?
Yeah, the knives, we see the knives for sure. And we size reduce, and those end up dropping down into the glass or make it through to the next line. And the magnet does get them, but that's not what we want in our metal. But you get the pots and pans. You know, a frying pan's a pretty hard piece of steel, and it gets into your screens, and now you get a jam, and now you're down, or now you break something. And so, you know, that's why we've always kind of said, don't put those in there. Yeah, we can get some, and yeah, we can pick them, and we do every single day. We pick those and drop them into the bulky items. But we don't want them because they cause damage. They hit the screen and they can jam that screen.
And we only have, our pre-sorts aren't that long, right? So you only have, you don't have a very big window to catch that pot. And to John's point, not only does it jam up your screens, but man, I think every one of us has seen it hit that screen and launch at 1,000 miles an hour through that plant.
I think from an education purpose too, on things like pots and pans and knives, it's where the hierarchy almost does a disservice to us sometimes, because you have reduce, reuse, and recycle. And I think the homeowner kind of packages all that together. And just because you can reuse an old pot doesn't mean it should go in your recycling. So that's a point I would really hit home from public education for some of the recycling coordinators when you're talking to the public. Is those 3 things are very different from one another. And even though you always see them in the same graphic, just because you can reuse something doesn't mean you should put it in your recycling.
Yeah, good point, Rachel. So, as we do come to a close, I didn't cover everything, but I tried to come up with some of the main issues and concerns that I'm aware of at some of the MRFs. And, I want to give you an opportunity if there's other items I didn't mention that you feel are really important for recycling coordinators to know about. And in the meantime, if you are a recycling coordinator with us today and you have a question about an item, what's the impact to the MRF, throw it in the Q&A. But tell me, is there anything else that we didn't cover that you have a concern about that you are seeing on a regular basis that is so far out there on the what's in, what's out, that you want us to be able to address straight on?
I know we talked batteries a lot, but one of the batteries that we didn't talk about is a car battery or motorcycle battery, which we get a lot of those. You wouldn't think that would happen, but when I look at the pile at our facility that we clean up every day, it's put in another location to be moved out. Lead acid batteries are throughout the day. We get those along with even just standard batteries, AAA, AA. Those don't cause us fires, but they end up in our metal or in our glass, and they do become problems there. But they don't belong there. Is the point? We're not a food grade container. They're not a packaging. They're just something. I don't know why people put them in there, but we get car batteries and regular batteries.
And even we get car parts too. I don't know if you've gotten that, Jonathan, but
yes,
you hear boom, 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 and then you see it's a huge car part.
Well, that's what I was talking the other day. One of the worst ones for us are the rotors. I don't know why people continue to put rotors in a tote. And they're hard to get, right? They're flat, right? They're easily hidden, and they're heavy as all get out. And exactly what he said, the minute you hear that bang, you're hoping somebody ran for that e-stop.
Yeah, and to the rotors and the car parts too, the Boston facility is just trying to figure out a way to get all that stuff out front in their new system, because when you have all this high-tech opticals, the way that it works is it has to move so fast, typically 500 feet per minute, the conveyor. And so that settles out the plastic, so it gives the camera system a better time to look at the target it wants to hit. But when that rotor hits that freaking belt, that 500 feet per minute, it is flying across and damaging the optical system. I mean, they're having a lot of problems with that right now. It's crazy in those things. When those car parts come in, forget it.
And I would say on top of all of the things that we've discussed that we see a lot of, I would always keep anything that has a seasonality in mind. You have the 4th of July, you have fireworks, you have springtime, we clean out sheds, pool chemicals, things like that. But also think of things like hunting season. We get a lot of ammunition. At one of our MRFs in Vermont, we had canned bear spray come through, and we got shut down completely. We had numerous employees go to the hospital for exposure to those chemicals. So just think of anything that has a season, and anything like that just does not belong in the recycling stream.
Yep.
That's really helpful. And some of us, when we're doing social media, we use the seasons as part of our guide for social media.
Yes.
We'll take that into consideration. That's really helpful, Rachel. There's a couple of comments, questions in the Q&A. I'm wondering if the one about markets for recovered batteries, is that, maybe if you can add to that below, and then I'll go to the next one. Are you referring to the recovered batteries that are found at the MRF, or are you just talking about batteries in general in their market? If you could clarify, that would be helpful. I'll go to Linda's question regarding plastic oil containers, olive oil, avocado oil. How do you get all the oil out? I think it's not about wiping the oil out, and you guys can correct me if I'm wrong. It's more like just making sure it's empty. Like, it doesn't still have a little bit of oil in it, no matter, even if it's vegetable oil or cooking oil, correct? Just empty.
Wash it out.
Not wiped out.
rinse it out.
You want it washed out.
Yeah, when you're dealing with recycling, any container, think about, and this is how I explain it, think about the glassware that you put in your cabinets. You would never put a glass back in your cabinet with a little bit of soda in it, right? So you have to do the same exact thing with the recycling. right? It has to be clean.
Okay, so you don't just empty it, you want it rinsed out. So we always say that, rinse and keep it loose, not bundled, bagged, or boxed. Okay. I'll just ask the question since the person hasn't responded yet. When you do find a lithium battery or even a single-use battery, what are you guys doing with it? Are you just sending it to residual to waste energy? Are you recovering them, sending them to call to recycle? So you're sending them to call to recycle.
No, we go to
So
NLR. We have to package them in vermiculite, in drums, plastic drums, very carefully. And they have to be done quickly because if they sit, they could catch fire. And it's a huge cost per drum to send them to NLR. Where people that have a drill battery or a saw battery or a phone, return it to the vendor that you bought it from. They will take them back and send them to call to recycle or somebody. But to us, if we leave them in a pile or if we put them into our trash, we're just going to cause a problem somewhere else. So we're not doing that. We're taking them out. We're packing them. You can't get that many in a drum, and we're doing it every day.
Right. And then Kendall just added, generally in regards to batteries, are markets developing that would help drive investment in recovery? Call to Recycle just announced battery sorting system in Ontario. Well, Canada has EPR for batteries, by the way. State of Connecticut did just try to pass in this legislative session EPR for batteries. Today's the last day, didn't go anywhere. I say we need to continue to push for EPR for that enhanced public education. In the meantime, Call to Recycle does provide free containers to municipalities. We can use public education and outreach to tell our residents to use those containers, drop-off containers. Some of our e-waste recyclers, as we are an e-waste EPR state, they have containers in their C containers where they collect e-waste. It's designated for batteries. We need to educate our consumers, our residents, that we have drop-off containers for lithium batteries and to use those drop-off containers. And those batteries do go to Call to Recycle, and they are reclaiming the metals in those batteries. There are markets for the rechargeable batteries. We're just not as advanced as Canada quite yet with our EPR. Does anyone want to add anything? I am going to share my screen while you wrap up a few of the comments, but I want to thank you all for taking the time. It's been 5 sessions, it's a lot of time out of your day, and I really appreciate it. I know personally from my staff and others who've reached out to me that this has been incredibly helpful for them as recycling coordinators. So your time has been valuable. I want to thank you. And before I go to the next slide, I do want to let you have an opportunity to say anything else you want to talk about in regards to contamination. We do have one other comment about aerosol cooking oil cans emptied. Yes, we talked about that when we talked about food grade aerosol containers versus non-food grade. Again, even if it's a food grade aerosol container, it needs to be empty. Nothing should come out of it when you spray it. Any comments to that?
No, I'm good with that. I just want to commend all the people that are on this phone because they're going taking the extra step to listen to us, and we appreciate that. We thank you for that. We know your work is hard and that not everybody listens to you and you don't get paid. And it's really great that you're doing this, and we appreciate it as a facility. And hopefully you don't take our feedback the wrong way. Maybe we come off a little strong sometimes, but we really appreciate everything you do, and thank you.
Well said, Jonathan. Thank you. Anyone else want to add anything? No? Well, thank you, everyone. Thank you to all our panelists. Thank you to all of our attendees. This is recorded, so if you want to share it, as long as you are a CRC member, you will have access to the recording. Our last series on the what's in, what's out it's not necessarily about single stream recycling, but we wanted to throw in there about recycling organic food scraps. So that last session will be May 22nd. These guys get to have a break and not have to join us that day, but I hope we'll have you back, all of you, and we'll continue this conversation about how to make recycling in Connecticut great, successful, and safe for our workers. So thank you, everyone, for joining us today. I look forward to May 22nd. Thank you, Jonathan, Joe, Mike, Keith, and Rachel.
You're welcome. Thank you.
For having us.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.